my name is Vaishali Deshwal and currently I'm working as an assistant professor at AKGEC. So today's session is about project financing and today we'll discuss unit 4 of PME, subject project management and entrepreneurship, and the code for this subject is KHU 802. So these are some of the outlines which I will discuss in this session. First is the project cost estimation and the working capital requirements. Then we have some sources of the funds and capital budgeting. Then risk and uncertainty in project evaluation, how to prepare the projected financial statements. There are many financial statements and we'll see how to prepare all these financial statements. Then the projected balance sheet. Then we have projected income statement. Then the projected funds and cash flow statements, so inflows and the outflows, and preparation of the detailed project report. What are some of the prerequisites and how to prepare a project report, and the project finance. What are the different sources of the finance to finance a project? So let's discuss these terminologies one by one. First topic is the financial feasibility. So in this we evaluate the feasibility of a project on the different aspects. So we can just define it as a process of identifying the overall investment outlay, determining the expected rate of return. So it is important to determine what will be the rate of return and then evaluate the project financially. So it is very important for any organization to find out the feasibility of the project, and these are some of the factors why it is that crucial for any organizations to evaluate it. First is that it influences the firm's growth in the long term. Then it affects the risk of the firm into consideration. It involves huge quantum of the funds generally, and a wrong decision with regard to investment of huge sum of funds may prove fatal for an existing firms. So you can just add some more few points to explain the importance of the financial feasibility of the project. Next is the careful analysis of the cash flow. A cash outflow and the inflow is essential before applying any kind of the technique to evaluate all these things. Then there is a terminology, capital budgeting. So this is quite important. And what is capital budgeting? So it's an important in which we select after identification and evaluating a project that requires the large sum of funds and generates the long-term benefits in future. So these are some of the steps in the financial analysis. So let's go one by one. Like first step is the estimation of the cost of project. Second is the estimation of the project cash flows. Then the expected rate of return. And the last one is the application of the decision rule. Okay. So first step is estimation of the cost of project. So there are certain factors under all these heads which we need to consider. First is the estimation of cost of project. So in this we consider the fixed investment and the working capital under this head. So there are various components in the cost of project, and mainly it includes two things. First is the fixed and second is the working capital. So the cost of project includes all the cost incurred before commissioning of the commercial production, that is the manufacturing process, or operations service projects. And what about the fixed investment? So the fixed investment includes long-term assets like machinery, equipments, land, buildings, etc. And what is the working capital? So working capital is the short-term fund. So it includes all the things short-term funds needed for, like for the salary purpose, for the raw materials, for buying the raw materials, for rent, for the maintenance of the equipments, and for the electricity. So you can have a formula to calculate the working capital. So it can be said like it's a difference between the current assets, whatever you are having, minus current liabilities. So indicates the short-term financial position of the organization. So, and to have some working capital is important to run business properly. Now estimate the total cost. What is the total cost? That is the fixed plus working, and it will help to secure the funding and loans, then prepare the financial projections and ensure the smooth project execution. Next is the estimation of the project cash flow. Now, this estimate involves all the project cash flow during the life cycle of the project, and it includes the initial investments, cash flow generated during the operation, and at the termination of the project. Then we have the cash flow definition in the very second point. It says that it's a net amount of the cash being transferred into and out of a business in terms of income and expenditure. And it is quite desirable to have a positive cash flow in order to do the financial analysis. Next is the estimation of the expected rate of return. So, how to estimate that what we will get at the end of the year. So, for financing a project, there are many sources of the funds. Like we design the optimal capital structure for the firm, and it includes two components again. So the first component is a risk-free component, and the second component is the risk component. So risk-free component, it generally includes the weighted average of the cost of capital, and if it is risk-free, then it will give low return investment. But when we consider the risk component, so it's a risk premium due to the high investment and will give the high return. So the formula to calculate the expected rate of return is like return is equal to VF minus VI divided by VI. What is VF? It's a final value minus initial value divided by the initial value. So rate of return is the net gain or loss of an investment over a period of time, and help the investor to assess whether the return justify the risk. So if it justify, then it is quite feasible to pursue a particular project, and that is why it's an important step in the financial analysis. So it influences the decisions while we do consider the capital structure in the fund allocation. Next is this application of the decision rule. So this is the last stage of the financial analysis, and in this we apply certain tools for checking the financial feasibility. So again, we have some of the techniques known as the capital budgeting techniques, and they are applied in order to find out the profitability and the expected returns from the project. Next topic is the component of the cost of project and its estimation. So in this we'll see that what are the components of the cost of project and how to estimate all those things. So project includes all the expenses, all sort of the expenses incurred before the commercialization of the project. Okay, before it goes into the market, we consider all the expenses incurred on the project. So it includes the capital investments. Capital investments, all the reoccurring expenses which will be done on the monthly basis or yearly basis, like salary and the interest, etc., incurred before the completion of the project and before the project is handed over for the operations. Generally, you can say that it is before the commercialization of the project. Next is the various step of the cost of project as per the guidelines of the various financing and appraising authorities. And these are some of the components. So we have a component. So this is the head, like land and the site development, and under this head we have certain factors, so the subcomponents which fall under this land and the site development. So in under land and site development, it includes all expenses incurred on the acquisition of land and making it suitable for the implementation of the project. So the subcomponents which we can include under this head, like purchase price of land, then legal and registration charges, laying of internal and approach roads, boundary wall, fencing of land, tube wells and electrifications, gates and site offices, and etc. Next is the construction cost. So the construction cost is the second component, and it includes the expenses incurred on the construction of factory and non-factory buildings of all the nature. So we have certain concrete structures including in that. Then we have certain types of the buildings, different factory buildings, and we can count all these things under this head, the construction cost. So factory buildings like boiler house, transformer room, workshop, labs, etc. And the various non-factory buildings are like security houses, workers restrooms, parking, essential quarters, and warehouses. So all these things you can count under this head, the construction cost, and it is also one of the very important component of the cost of the project. Next is the plant and machinery, and it's the biggest one among all the components. So it comprises the overall cost of the imported and indigenous machinery, including its erection and the foundation cost. And there are certain subcomponents which we can include. First is the excise and the custom duty or the sales duty, which are on the goods for the import and the export. And transshipment cost is there, erection and the foundation cost, piping cost, etc. So all cost which will be done on the plants and the machinery. Next component is the technical know-how. So when we have some technology or new technology, then it is quite important to know how to use it efficiently. So when generated or transferred, technology has its own cost, and this technical know-how cost includes the basic cost of technology development or purchase, training cost for the employees, royalty paid if lump sum is there, and then we have utility. So utilities are the common facilities used for the various plants of same organization, and it is quite similar to the above one, that is a plant and the machinery cost, but there is a difference, and the difference lies in the fact that they're used for the various plants, whereas the plant and machinery is for the individual plants. So for example, boiler, compressor, and some sort of the treatment plants. Next component is the miscellaneous fixed asset. So these are the costs which are not included in the above cost, like in the plants and the machinery, and in the technical know-how cost, in the construction cost. So the other cost, all other cost we can put under the head like miscellaneous fixed assets. So these are termed miscellaneous fixed asset, for example, furniture or the fixtures, computer, printer, accessories, etc. Then we have certain primarily expenses and pre-operative expenses included in the miscellaneous fixed assets. So primarily expenses are that it includes the market survey expenses and interest including or during the implementation. Next is the pre-operative expenses. So these includes the normal expenses such as the salary and the rent incurred by the enterprise, and include traveling expenses, company formation expense also. Then we have contingency and margin money from the working capital. What is contingency? So it's just like a cushion fund kept for some unforeseen situations to handle some sort of the expenditures or some unforeseen expenses which are not evaluated before the commercialization of the projects. That is why we are saying that they are the unforeseen, and to handle all such expenses we need a fund or the cushion fund, that is the contingency. Next is the margin money for working capital. So working capital is generally financed through the short-term sources of the finance. Next is the working capital estimations. So the working capital is known as the operating capital, and it should just be adequate. So the higher working capital will mean underutilization of the fund, and the lower working capital may hinder smooth operations. So there are certain determinants of the working capital like raw material inventory. We have less creditors. So the money spent on buying the raw materials after adjusting for any amount earned to the supplier. So these are certain determinants of the working capital. First one is the raw material inventory. Suppose if you bought rupees 1 lakh worth of raw material but owe 30,000 to the suppliers, then the actual working capital needed is 70,000. So this is how you can calculate the working capital. Next is the work in progress inventory. So the money tied up in partially finished goods, and these are products that are not yet ready for the sale, and they are in the process of being manufactured, so they are in the partially finished good. Partially finished goods comes under the work in process inventory. Next is the finished good inventory. So when your money is stuck in completed products but they are waiting to be sold, then you refer such things as the finished goods inventory. We are using a term here, that is the finished goods inventory. Okay. Next is the debtor. So the amount of money the company expects to receive from the customers at some date who bought goods on credit. So it is treated as a money stock until the customer pay back to the company. Next is the cash, or you can say less bills payables. So the cash available after subtracting short-term liabilities like bill payable. So what are the bill payables? Bill payables are the payments the company still needs to make. Okay, so this is how you can have some determinants of the working capital, which will determine that what will be the working capital. Next is the project cash flow. So in this we have certain terminologies, and we need to understand these terminologies. So first is the project cash flow differ from the financial cash flow. So there is a difference, and the difference lies in the operation. Project cash flow can be classified in the three categories. First one is the initial outlay, then we have operating, and the last one is a terminal cash flow. So in the initial outlay, if you see, firstly we'll discuss the initial outlay, and we have three things in this. First is a fixed investment in the working capital. So initially we have this thing in the very initial outlay. Then we have the operating cash flow, that is the generally outflow, and terminal cash flow. In terminal cash flow, there is an inflow is there, and it is in generally 0th year. So whenever we are considering the initial outlay, it happens in the 0th year, or in the very beginning, or in the very initial year of the project. Whenever you are starting it, then it is considered as a fixed investment, whatever you are having, the FI plus working capital. So if fixed investment in working capital is the initial outlay. Okay, so the operating cash flow is calculated without considering interest as an expense. Initial outlay is generally before the project start, or you can say it is in the 0th year. Okay, suppose the lifespan of the project is 5 years, so the very beginning or the 0th year is the initial outlay. So when there is a capacity enhancement or increase in the sale, then there is an additional outlay in the next year. Okay, one should be very careful for computing the working capital, and it should be available 1 year in advance. So in advance, we should find out, or we should consider that what will be the working capital. For example, working capital of rupees 2 million is needed in the second year, suppose. So there is a working capital available for rupees 1.5 million in the very first year. So we have to prepare that much amount in the advance. Additional rupees 0.5 million should be considered in the very first year cash flow. As a first year cash flow is basically at the end of the first year and the starting of the second year. So it's a safe side if we have 1.5 million in the very first year. So we can arrange the rest amount in or you can say at the end of the first year. Okay. Next is the initial outlay. So initial outlay is generally, as we have seen in the diagram, so it is in the 0th year, in the very beginning, but sometimes the additional working capital requirement in the succeeding capital in the succeeding year, they may occur addition or the subtraction. So the addition and the subtractions, they are the part, and the minor you can increase some expense or you can decrease accordingly as per the requirement. Next is the operating cash flow. So it's a known cash expenditure, and these terminologies are again important. You need to understand that what is a known cash expenditure. So operating cash flow is the non-cash expenditure like depreciation added to the net profit after tax. Okay, so whatever you are considering after tax, the net profit whatever you are getting, so that is added to that only. Now we have the salvage value and redemptions of the working capital. So it is considered as a terminal cash flow. So if you see the diagram here, then we have some salvage value and we have some working capital. So in the very first we have working capital, and in the third one we have working capital. Then somewhere in between we have the operating cash flow. So in operating cash flow we have EBIT minus tax plus depreciation. What is EBIT? It's a earning before interest and the tax. Whatever money we are getting before interest and the tax, that is what we are considering as operating cash flow, through which we can just operate or manage all the operations we are occurring in the project. maintenance. Okay, next or the last is a terminal cash flow. So in this we have certain salvage value and the working capital. Now what are these things? Okay, so the salvage and the redemption of the working capital, they are considered as a terminal cash flow. Suppose you have some machinery or the equipments, and after selling those old machineries, whatever money you are getting, that is the salvage value, and that salvage value you are considering in the very third part or the last terminal cash flow. So the sum of all three cash flows in the corresponding year is the project cash flow. And what are the three cash flow here? So the three cash flows are the initial outlay, then we have operating cash flow, and the last one is the terminal cash flow. And we consider certain things under these heads like fixed investment, working capital, EBIT, depreciation, and salvage value, etc. So this is how this is a format for calculation of project cash flow. For example, if the lifespan of the project is like 5 years you are considering, so in the very 0th year or at the very beginning, the initial outlay will be fixed investment plus WC. WC is the working capital. Then we add some working capital and we may decrease it or we may add. Next is the operating cash flows. In operating cash flow, the formula is EBIT minus tax plus depreciation. And terminal cash flows are in the very end or in the last year of your project, that is the 5th year, you will consider two things. First is the salvage value plus the working capital. So salvage value means whatever money you are getting after selling all the machinery, all the old machinery, and the equipments. So whatever money you are getting, that is a salvage value plus working capital. And whatever sum you are getting out of all these three things, this term is referred as the project cash flow. Okay, so the project cash flow here, we have a certain formula where the FI is the fixed investment, WC is working capital, this is depreciation, and this is the salvage value. Okay, so we have used these terminologies in this table, and these are the abbreviations. So it should be noted that only the real expenses are considered in the cash flow, not the accounting expenses. And what the accounting expenses are? For example, the primary expenses, they are written off or writing down over the heads. Okay. Next is the risk and the uncertainty in the project evaluation. So there is a difference between the risk and the uncertainty, and that's a very minor difference. You need to understand that. So the risk is an unplanned event that may affect one or some of your project objective if it occurs. And the risk can be of two types. It can be positive, it can be negative. So if it is positive, then it will affect your project positively, and if it is negative, then it will affect the project negatively. So there are separate risk response strategies. We should have some strategies, tools, and techniques in order to respond the risk, okay, for the negatives and the positives. So the objectives of the negative risk responses strategy is to minimize their impact. Obviously, we need a strategy to handle the negative risk, and that to minimize their impact or the probability of causing some sort of the loss. So while the objective of the positive one is to maximize the chances of the impact. So it is always desirable to have some sort of positive risk. Okay. So you might also hear two more risk terms, known and unknown. So the known risk are identified during the identity process, identify risk process, and unknown risk are those you couldn't identify. So the risk which you were able to identify during the risk process, that is a known risk. Otherwise, these are the unknown risk. Then we have a plan, or you can say contingency plan. It is made for the known risk, and you'll use the contingency reserve to manage them. So the unknown risk, they are managed through the workaround using the management reserve. Next, we have the uncertainty. So in case of the uncertainty, so it's a lack of complete uncertainty, and this is a difference of the risk and the uncertainty. So in uncertainty, the outcome of any event is entirely unknown, and it cannot be measured or guessed, or you don't have any background or the information on the event. So it's not an unknown risk. You can't relate it to the unknown risk. In uncertainty, you completely like the background information of an event, and this is a difference between the unknown risk and the uncertainty, and that is why we are saying that it is not the unknown risk. So even though it has been identified. So in the case of unknown risk, although you have the background information, you missed it during the identity identify risk process. So this is the difference between the unknown risk and the uncertainty. So managing risk is quite easier in comparison or comparatively to the uncertainty, because you can identify them. So managing uncertainty is quite difficult. We have conventional risk or uncertainty management tools and techniques, and it involves two components. First one is the assessment, and second is the applying the controls. What is the assessment? In assessment, we do the threat identification, then classification, prioritizing and devising controls, etc. And finally, you'll apply the controls after the assessment. So there are several types of the risk. For example, the cost risk, schedule risk, performance risk. And the cost risk is the risk of event that impact the budget, okay, especially those cause the budget project to be completed over the budget. Suppose your budget is 5 lakh rupees. Suppose your budget is the 5 lakh rupees, and the risk is that will impact this budget. Okay, suppose you are left only with the 4 lakh, then how to complete the or how to manage all the things in the project, in the completion of project. Then we have errors in the cost estimation commonly generate the risk in addition to the external factors. Then the second risk is schedule. So the risk of the unplanned scheduling conflicts. So there should be a timeline, obviously. Next is the performance. So performance is the risk of event that cause the project to produce a result that are quite inconsistent, or you can say not desirable at all. So to protect a project from the unplanned risk, the project managers typically follow an ongoing risk management process. So ongoing risk management process is there, and in this we have some steps. What are the steps? First is we need to identify the risk, assign the ownership, analyze, prioritize, respond, and monitor. So such type of the management process is quite indispensable to handle the risk and uncertainty in the project evaluation. Next is the explanation of all these points, like identify, assignment, ownership, analyze, prioritize, respond, and monitor. So the next topic is the capital budgeting, and today we have discussed the risk and uncertainty in project evaluations. There are certain types of the tools and technology, then planning, there are certain components in the planning, we need to consider them. Then we have the project cash flow, and in the cash flow you need to understand the stable and all the terminologies or the abbreviations like EBIT. You need to know what is EBIT, tax and depreciation, how to calculate or what to consider under the initial outlay and the terminal cash flow. So in the terminal cash flow, we usually consider the salvage value plus the working capital, and the sum of all will give you the project cash flow. Okay. Next is we have discussed what is a working capital estimations, how to estimate all these things. Then what is contingency and the managing money. So this is enough for today, and in the next session we'll discuss some more topics like what is capital budgeting, what are certain terms which comes under the non-discounting and the discounting one. So this is it for today. Thank you.